Hello, everybody. Welcome to the call tonight. I am very excited about introducing Nan and talking about genetics 3x4. Some of you are new to me in my world. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm an osteoporosis patient navigator. So I help patients, once they get been diagnosed, to understanding all the nuances of that diagnosis and helping them with doctor's appointments, getting ready for the doctor's appointment, how to talk to a doctor, what not to say to a doctor. And I also, my first love is food because I do it 3 times a day. Most of us do, if not more. And I love to feed my bones at every chance that I can get. So I started out with food as healthy bones, or food for healthy bones is my company. And then I knew that the need for patient advocacy was much larger. So I bring specialists in to talk about all sorts of things. So thank you for being here. Nan, I'd like you to introduce yourself.
All right, thank you, Irma. I'm just tickled to be here. So, if you guys look at my last name, it's not mine really. I married it about 45 years ago, but it's actually Borchardt. So it's one then that gets a lot of people stumped, but it is one I am known here in our Kansas City region just literally as Nan. So that's fine as well. Don't even try the last name. I have been out of graduate school in 1983 and really had all intentions going to school with an undergrad in biochemistry, a second undergraduate degree in pre-med. My real plan was to get into being an actually an orthopedic surgeon. I myself was very interested in bones. I've had multiple joint replacements, a lot of it due to osteoarthritis. I have a long history of type 1 diabetes, and that's always been a real clinical fascination for me. And it's one of those things that really has a major impact upon in our body. So I was 5 years old when I was diagnosed. This is if you know anything about type 1 diabetes. This is not the type 2. We're just less than 5% of the people who have diabetes we're the ones with the autoimmune disease that's really shut down the beta cells of our pancreas. So when I think about diabetes, I really know that it causes a lot of cardiovascular issues, and it's one that for those of us who've had it for a while, we keep reading all kinds of things about, oh my goodness, with this long-standing diabetes, you really got to know a lot about taking good care of yourself. I'm a long-distance road cyclist. For about 23 years, I have ridden my bike between 4,000 and 5,000 miles each year, and really know that it's a real joy for me. I also am somebody who loves to scuba dive. I was doing a lot of golf before both of my hands needed to do some surgery, so that's again a joint and osteoarthritis issue, but I certainly have loved my time going around the country. Have ridden 50 miles in 48 of the 50 states. That's been a project over the years, and I've had a really blast doing it. Married to a great guy. We have 2 kids that we were some of the first people in America to go to Russia to adopt orphans, and they have been a real joy in our lives, and certainly now that they are full-time working independent people, it's hard to keep up with them because they're always on a road trip or doing something fun. But our lives are really blessed and have just so many things to be thankful for. And so this opportunity to speak to you gals tonight is something I've been looking forward to. So I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Nan. So, do you want to talk about you just mentioned some of the issues that you came into life with, or
Right.
do you want to talk about how the experience, the 3x4, helped you about your kidney issues, your blood pressure, your type 1, and your exercise?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And falling in love with genetics was something that happened probably nearly 20 years ago, because I'm a science nerd, and so I thought I want to know more about this. In the meantime, I'm realizing, gosh, my body is just kind of falling apart, which kind of goes with the territory with type 1 diabetes. But I literally at one point, literally just a few months ago, was on 5 different blood pressure medicines. And it's been amazing now that I'm knowing a little bit more about the genetics of that to say, I know what I can do to fix that. Have since now, very recently, have gotten it down to 2 blood pressure medicines. So blood pressure is generally beautifully controlled. I'm happy about that. generally in persons with type 1 diabetes, generally our cause of death, if you know anything about type 1, is going to be kidney failure. So I've been very, very interested in keeping careful track of renal function. And we measure that with a couple tests called glomerular filtration rate, what we call GFR. And then there's another test that's called the creatinine. So it's what is the level of trash that's running around in your blood, that's the creatinine, and then what is the rate at which your kidneys can clear out the trash, that's called the glomerular filtration rate. And so keeping an eye on those laboratory tests have been really helpful to me to know that I am actually making some major changes in what those laboratory tests have done or what they're revealing. And much of that has been driven by the genetics.
Well, that's absolutely fascinating. How are your kidneys now?
They're actually quite good. They're operating at about a 62%, which some point when I had not done a really good job with what my diet was, or it was as low as a 46%.
Right.
So I have done some somewhat miraculous work in turning that around. So I've been helped. I'm also really doing a good job making sure I'm well hydrated. So when you see me drinking today, that's exactly what I'm doing. It's just staying on top of my water, which is something that so many of us don't do a really good job of. So I want to encourage all you gals to do that as well.
So that was so much driven by the genetic testing that you did, in addition to the blood work that you're skilled at reading.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's something I do with all my patients. As you know, Irma, you and I have, and Vicki and I having worked together, I love making sure that my clients, in advance of us doing any work together, even in genetics, is to really look carefully at the various blood tests. And there are so many different tests that we should be looking at, and there's different tests for different conditions. So it's really not a one size fits all, because we know we're all, uniquely made. What's important to know is where to spend your money and where not to, in terms of what you might have to pay for out of pocket, or how might I be able to help you with getting the right lab test drawn at less money than what your copay might be with your insurance. So.
And we know that this opens up a whole can of worms,
Oh,
because
I know.
our doctors handcuff us into, no, I'm not getting you that test. And but we want it. And now there are more and more ways of getting various tests. In fact, I just heard today that FullScript is now offering blood labs. So there are a number of different ways that you can buy blood work yourself, but that's just a piece of it. Having somebody who knows how to read the blood work is key. So when I did the 3x4 with you, Nan, I think it was, I want to say 2 years ago.
It was 2 years ago. I love that you and Vicki have both done it. So I'd love to now kind of hear some of your stories as to what did you get out of it?
I'm one of those people that wants to know more. And we were talking earlier with one of the participants. She said, the more I know, the better I feel about my next step. So when I looked at my cardio situation, I thought, okay, I'm 72 years old. People in my area, in my world, are having heart issues, and they're waiting for it to happen versus taking a proactive step. So I wanted to do that. So Vicki found an integrative cardiologist, and we went and did as many blood tests and cardiac tests and stress tests as we could possibly get. Now I know my heart. I know my heart is full of love, but now I know how it's functioning and what I need to cut back on. So that was extremely helpful, because I probably would have pushed that back and said, let me think about my bones. The body, everything relates to everything else. So the heart is attached to the bones are attached to the brain. It's a moving, functional machine that we cannot ignore or silo different aspects of it. So this opened up a number of different aspects for me, and understood, and you'll be talking about pathways. And that was very exciting for me. First of all, the test itself is beautifully presented. So someone who's a visual learner, as myself, and Nan will show you the test, helped me to see what I needed to understand. It helps me to understand supplements and also the food choices that I should be making. So it's quite comprehensive. I was listening to Dr. Sarah Gottfried, who is well known within the hormone world. She just recently wrote a book on autoimmune, and she's been doing genetic testing, she said, for 40 years. 30 or 40 years, excuse me.
It's amazing. Yeah.
And she happens to use this particular 3x4 test. So I thought, okay, let me bring it to my audience and let's see how we can help educate people. All right. So, I'm going to let you take it from here, Nan. You want to present?
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you, Irma. I know that there's so much that we can get from the genetics, and I think to piggyback on one of Irma's points was that she was really taking a very a proactive stance with regards to her pursuit of health and wellness. And regrettably, our medical system right now is all about, hey, let's wait until you have a problem before we actually pay for anything. So again, this is a lot like being intentional. And so I love that about what both Vicki and Irma have done with that. So I'm going to now do a screen share for you all, and I'm going to start with just the very basics of a couple of slides on a PowerPoint, and then at a point within the slideshow, I will then move to actually sharing with you what my 3x4 report looks like. And I have one particular area that I will, I have my husband's permission to do this, so don't worry about any HIPAA violations, but he knows that I use his gene report when I'm wanting to demonstrate or show what the visualization of some of these issues are. And again, we're both real different, and so it's kind of fun to actually have that there. The screen share now, here we go.
And before you start, Nan, with that, and go ahead and get it going. And while you're setting that up, I just want to remind everybody, put your questions, please, in the chat. And we're going to have about 15 minutes at the end to answer some of the questions. Vicki's going to go through that, and she's going to help us with presenting the questions.
All right. So looking at this whole concept of bone health and genetics, we're not going to do the specific genes for bone health, because one of the things that I'm going to share with you is eons ago, probably close to, not as long as Sarah Godfrey's been doing it, but probably close to 20 years ago, I did 23andMe. And the thing about that is that they had a 1 gene equals 1 problem. And I'm going to share with you that the complexity of how these genetics works are that there are multiple genes that all cofactor into creating an issue. And so I want you to know that we're not just specifically doing one set of genes here, but we're going to really take into account the fact that most of us women are pretty decent about our annual medical exam. So, okay, good. We'd say, check that off our box. And I can tell you, as somebody who does blood work probably every 5 weeks throughout the 52 weeks of the year, I do a ton of blood work just to make sure that what I'm doing is actually keeping me well. So yeah, that one's a big piece for me too. But I think what we really got started with is, why would somebody want to do anything about these gene stuff? And I guess I would think about, how's my family history? Well, mine's not all that great. My family had quite a bit of cardiovascular disease. My folks passed at actually a fairly old age of 89, but I know that they had their share of troubles for sure. So I know my family history's not great. And no, I don't like surprises. And would I do anything if I understood more about it? And the answer is a resounding yes. I am that nerd who loves science and loves to know, how's that work, or how does that happen? And so I think that genetics has just opened up, you guys, a whole new world of investigation for me. And I guess I will share with you, truly having lived with type 1 for 58 years, I will share with you, I was trained at the Joslin Clinic out of Cambridge, Massachusetts. My dad was a professor at Harvard at the time when I was diagnosed as a kid. And they told my mom and dad that, well, this little girl is probably going to live between 15 and 20 years. And so that was kind of I didn't know that at the time. My mom and dad didn't really share much of that until I was much, much older. But, I know that they were very influential about helping me to make changes that would be a real help and blessing to my health. So I know then when we start looking at why would you want to do DNA analysis, or why would you want to do the gene testing, it's certainly, and I should probably move this so you guys aren't stuck looking at that. Help, Vicki, what can I do to get rid of this?
No, Nan, we're only seeing you and your screen.
Oh, good, because I was seeing on my screen, it's overlapping the whole right side of the screen, so good, my apologies. But anyway, just seeing what are my potentials for developing certain diseases. And I think here's the big thing that I love. What are the root causes for some of these things? And would I be able to maybe reduce some of the guesswork in treating some of my things that are quite broken? And I think I may have shared this story with Vicki and Irma, but this is odd. I'm embarrassed to tell you this, but I will because it really helps to explain who I am. I love cars. I've always had fast cars, you know, the kind of cars that are the ones that the motorhead guys drive. Nan's always had one of or two of those cars, so I've had a lot of those sports cars. And the guy that I take my car to, I currently have a Mustang GT. It's black, it's got 500 horsepower, and it's got a motor, and it's about a 6-speed manual transmission. So Paul and I joke about the fact that it has a millennial anti-theft device already equipped in it. Because it's got a manual transmission. One of the things I have to chuckle about with regards to the guy who fixes my car or takes a look at it is he would oftentimes just guess and say, well, I don't know how it's running, Nan, but let me take it for a drive and see how it's going. And it was kind of odd that he would have to keep it for a few days. I really think he just liked to drive it. But he'd said, well, let me tinker with it a little bit more. And nowadays, when I overtake one of my cars to him, he'll say, well, let me hook it up to the computer. You guys have probably heard them say that as well. And you think, well, dang, that's really a pretty slick way of figuring out what the problem is. And I think about genetics in the same way as when the mechanic who has done really well with all the different cars I've had say, well, let me just hook it to the computer and I'll know how to fix it or what needs adjustment. But I think oftentimes we have a real issue with regards to what's our next step. And I'm hopeful that as we look at nutrigenomics, and so that's the area that I am very much involved with, we'd say, hey, it's what's the impact that food has upon how our genes behave. And I think as we look at that, I'd love to share with you a little bit about what my genetics were doing. So this is the same report, obviously, for Irma or for Ricky. We'd say, yeah, this is what the report looks like.
Nutrigenomics.
Yeah, right.
This is a word that we're going to be hearing more and more about, and you just
Yes.
defined it. Do it one more time. Tell us what that actually is.
Well, I think oftentimes we get real hung up on the genetics part of it, but in many cases, when people are looking at the concept of what do I need to do with the problems that I have, you and I, Irma, are doing things that are in the biochemistry world with food. And food is awesome biochemistry, but what we have to say is the nutrigenomics, you hear that prefix nutra, so that's the connection with the nutrition world, genomics then being the plural of genes. What we're finding is that in many cases we can influence the expression of the genes such that we can manipulate them to do the good things better and slow down or quiet down the troublemakers. And so when we talk about nutrigenomics, we have a lot of the issues with food that what I love about 3x4 is they have a huge emphasis on what should we be eating and what should we try to reduce or get rid of. So what I would like to do then is share with you that everybody has this is a buccal swab test, and this means that you're scrubbing a little Q-tip on the inside of your cheek for about 60 seconds. You do it in the early morning before you've even had a drink of water or a cup of coffee. And then you're collecting cells out of the inside of your mouth. And then there are great directions as to how to get that, basically that cell sample into a solution. And then you end up sending it to the lab that happens to be in Atlanta. And then they process it. About 4 weeks later, we have information. We're going to be looking at something in terms of basically the impact of color. And we're going to talk about what are the potential of some of these genes to either create challenges for us or to say, wow, this is working great. So we're talking about impact. Something can be very dark purple and have a high impact and say, wow, is this ever a mess, Nan? Or it could also be something that is a really benefit when it comes to maybe your strength training or your endurance. It might be like, hey, this is good. So we're not necessarily thinking that purple is bad, but purple generally says it demands some attention. So they're going to buzz through the stuff that's not all that fun. But one of the things that they do is they take 3 areas, looking at all the genetics, and say, Nan, what are your biggest 3 issues? And this is what got me interested in the work that Irma does, is say, Nan, your bone health is really of high impact, which means pay attention. This is what you should be doing to actually help. What I love about 3x4 is, unlike so many of the other gene tests that are out there, is that it's, first of all, as Irma had said, it's super visual, and I love that. But then what you see here is this is what we should eat. So knife and fork represents recommendations about food. And then it says, what are the activities or lifestyle things that I need to do? Again, this is unique for me. I know a number of you on the call here are persons who also have bone health issues. I can think that most of this might be applicable for you, but this is one that I would say it's important that we each have our unique health history and our laboratory results woven in so we know what should we really emphasize. I'm a real nut about vitamin D levels, and I know most people don't get enough unless they're supplementing it. Vitamin K is an important piece as well. Magnesium also is critical with regards to how do we help to keep our bones well. Making sure that I'm a real fan of hydrolyzed collagen. Irma, are you using some collagen?
I am, but I eat animal protein, and collagen is typically, it is bovine
Yeah,
unless it's marine,
yeah, it
right?
is. Yeah, it's good. But so what I like about this is it gives us specific supplementation recommendations. For example, magnesium is something that if you pick the wrong kind, you will spend your entire day in the restroom having uncontrolled diarrhea. Or it might be something that would be quite unpleasant with regards to how it makes you feel. So again, I like mag-glycinate is my favorite one there. And again, we're all, we have different combinations of different types of calcium, and so making sure the selenium's good, zinc's a key piece.
But
Nice.
I want to stop you there for a second because I'm saying
Yeah,
something that's a flag for me, which is the strontium citrate.
yeah,
It's
I'm not a
very,
fan of that as well. So
very controversial. Okay.
I don't use that one. Again, I didn't share with you guys that this particular gene test is actually from Johannesburg, South Africa. These are some very good, well-educated clinicians that have done I think a good job, although there's a little bit of controversy with the strontium. So that is not one that I do either, but so yeah, I'm not surprised, Irma, that you caught on that one, definitely. Collagen and joints, that's my number 2 issue. You're like, okay, this is why, Nan, you've had every joint in your body replaced. But it is one that I think we oftentimes will see the collagen and joint bone issues, what we call SNPs, and I'll explain that one in a minute. But we find then that the joints and the collagen, when they're not doing great, the bones are not either. So it's not unusual to have them both ranked as something high. You see, again, we're looking at the very specific food recommendations, the exercise, things to improve our joint health, for example, and again, back to the supplements. We're going to find that in many cases, inflammation may be an area as well. This particular test will test, this genetic test will test 165 different genes. And so, boy, can you actually see an awful lot with that. And so, again, with regards to inflammation, one of the things I'm talking about frequently with my patients is what kind of animal fat that's saturated is creating greater inflammation. Another piece is, where are you getting your arachidonic acid? Arachidonic acid is something, this is a bonus question for one of you, so Vicki, pay attention if somebody can answer in the chat, but there's a common fish that people eat way too much of that is the highest arachidonic acid compound in the entire food world. And it turns out that it's tilapia. And so when we start looking at that, which really causes a lot of inflammation, tilapia is at the top of the list. And I'd ask you gals to drop it like a hot rock and don't mess with it, because boy, does it jam inflammation quite high.
And it's also farm raised, typically
Yeah,
farm
it's
raised.
yucky. Yeah, it's trash. So please don't buy it. Even if it's at Costco and it says they're pecan encrusted tilapia, don't fall for it. Okay. I'm somewhat of a nut about higher quality omega-3 fatty acids. When we look at the recommended dose, in particular for inflammation, this 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams is not the weight of the pill. they'll say, oh, this is 1,000 milligrams, is when you look at the label, say, no, that's not what we're interested in. We're looking at EPA and DHA, which are the two component parts of fish oil that actually do the heavy lifting for lowering the inflammatory process. So these are the kinds of things that I like to do with my patients, to say, hey, let's make sure you're getting the right stuff. And if it's a junk fish oil, we don't need the heavy metals like nickel and cadmium and mercury and lead that are so very commonplace in some of the junk cheap fish oils.
So I want to pause.
Go ahead, please do.
Because the omega-3s, my cardiologist has myself, Vicky, I think that you're also at this level. So 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams is 1 to 2 grams. Yes.
Correct.
So
EPA and DHA specifically.
Right. So we're up to 4 a day.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's impressive.
And that was a big deal because Vicky is a vegetarian.
Right.
And Vicky, do you want to say something about that? What made you?
Yeah, it was the one compromise I have made, and it has made a difference. So he raised me to the 4 grams, and also the CoQ10 was raised to correspond with that.
Fantastic. I love CoQ10, Vicky. One of my favorite things in the whole chemistry world. Definitely. All right. So those are my top 3. And what you'll see next are the summary of the genes. And you'll say, hey, Nan, you've got some stuff that's actually going to protect you. So these are what we'll call the beneficial genes. I'm particularly happy with my ApoE genes because these are the ones that predict Alzheimer's or cognitive age decline. Both of my folks had that at the point that they passed. So Carla, my sister, and I kind of looking at this going, okay, I think we're both okay here. But it helps us to say, what's the good stuff? We see no impact. So this says both your mom and your dad gave you perfectly functioning genes here. So those are the good guys. And then we get into those that these are still on this upper right-hand corner. Those are ones that say, hey, Nan, you got a decent set here. I'm thinking, okay, good. Here's, for example, my MTHFR genes. You guys are probably familiar with that one. We know that in the media, that's one that's oftentimes talked about. Thankfully, that's not one of my problems. But we look at these and say, wow. Then we get into some of these that are lower impact, meaning either my mom or dad gave me one that wasn't quite working. Then we get into medium impact, high impact, and very high. So I told you about my interesting blood pressure. That's that ACE gene that is absolutely broken. Both my folks had high blood pressure, so we're not too confused or surprised about that. So this is then the 165 genes that they test. And then they put all of them into different pathways and say, where could you spend most of your time? So they look at cellular pathways and different systems. Much of this you guys are going to be familiar with. Vascular health, for example. A little bit about our exercise. And we're going to spend a moment or two when we get to that point to share with you a little bit about that. Here's what they'll say about our training response. What should I be doing? Should I be doing more endurance activity or should I be doing more weightlifting? Here are some of the nutrients they've checked. And I'll share with you, I'm a very slow processor of caffeine. This gene test kind of wrecked my world because I love maybe a cup or 2 of coffee in the afternoon. Had to give that up. I was realizing what an impact it was having on blood pressure and the fact that I'm a very slow processor. This is this concept of methylation, and methylation is a very complicated biochemistry piece that services all of the cells and actually really has a donation of what we call a methyl group to a compound that actually then makes it such that it is useful for the rest of the systems. Pretty much all of the genes require your body to have appropriate methylation pathways, and when they don't have that to work with, what you're going to find is what happens with the DNA. So here's a single strand of DNA, here's the cell, and what we find is this pathway is completely messed up. And so mine looks good as opposed to the brokenness. If we were to show you somebody who had a really broken methylation pathway, you'd see all of these little joints over here would all be broken. And so those are persons that you have to treat very uniquely. But I'll show you a slide about that later. Oxidative stress, that's a little bit like rust on your car. You know that your body, every time you take a breath, and take a big breath in, whether you're exercising or just sitting watching a video or a PowerPoint, what you'll find is that every breath that we take is causing oxidative stress. So, well, again, we say, well, we can't stop breathing. But if you think about a banana or an apple that you've peeled or chopped up, it gets brown after a while, doesn't it? And that's that oxygen changing the molecular structure of the apple or the banana. What I find that is also interesting in this that we've got here is this business of detoxification. And detox is something that I have to say is important to know a little bit about, because that's our body's ability to remove junk in our cells. It has a lot to do with how often at your house the trash people come to pick up your household's trash. When I'm working with my clients who have cancer, approximately 40% of all of my patients, I'm currently working with a fairly high number of patients, but I always have room for more. It's unlike the person who cuts your hair. You know, once you've got somebody who you like to cut your hair, you don't shop around. You don't keep looking at new places to get your hair cut. I am not that I don't function in that world. If I can help to get you well and on the right track, you don't have to come see me all the time. Once we got you on the right track, this is not an ongoing relationship. So I like the fact that when I'm looking at the 1,100 people that I'm currently got on my patient list, they're not there all the time, which is probably good news for all of us. These are the cardiovascular issues. When people have a purple, high impact mood and behavior, those are the folks you'll see who have a lot of issues then with anxiety, depression, learning disabilities. Oftentimes will be very, very much higher strung, but certainly ones who have problems with sleep and pain is another one. But this is one then that is one that we can actually change with some of the supplements that we use. Here's that memory and brain health. That's always something good to actually know a little bit about, particularly if you have family history. If you guys know about histamine, it's not just about allergies. One of the ways that I ask if somebody has a histamine allergy is I ask, do the insides of your ears itch? And so often, you guys, they will say, oh my gosh, Nan, how did you know? I'm always got pens in my ears or pencils in my ears. I'm like, nope, don't do that. But when you look at somebody who's got super itchy ears, or as a younger woman on a regular monthly menstrual cycle, if their period just about came close to dang near killing them pain-wise, that's one. If they find that they have a real issue with both the fall and the spring allergies, or if they have pet dander allergies, most of the time it's this histamine thing. And what we're finding is that it's very easy for me to shut that down so it's not the issue that we oftentimes find. Many times the medications for histamine are damaging to the very genes that handle histamine. So the longer that somebody's been on allergy shots, the more likely things continue to get worse. So it's kind of nice if you can get them off that. I'm using something called alpha-glycosyl isoquercetin, which is the name of the compound. It's not one I'll ever ask you to repeat the name of, but it is something that really helps. People have said, Nan, I'm off of that darn medication. I'm so much better now that I'm knowing I'm taking the right stuff. And it's something that really now the allergies don't bother me in the fall or in the springtime. When I'm looking at my women with breast cancer, hormone-driven cancer, this is usually a dark purple, and they've got so many pathway issues with regards to detoxification as influenced by their hormones. So that's a common one as well. This glucose and insulin, as you'd say, well, Nan, duh, you told us that you were type 1. But I will tell you that when you look at this particular pathway, this is about type 2. Okay, remember that's about 95% of the persons in America that have diabetes. It's type 2. And so I know that I have grandparents on my mother's side. Everybody on that side of the family had type 2 diabetes. So that's why this one is looking as it does. Here's where I became a little bit more interested. It's this cardiovascular health. And as I was sharing with Irma, I've been doing a lot of work recently with learning more about the vascular health. And the little area within the vessels is something called the endothelial glycocalyx. And what I'm really kind of excited about is probably just within the last 90 days have started working with the supplements that deal with this vascular wellness piece. And as I shared with you earlier, I was on 5 different blood pressure medicines taken 3 times a day to keep my blood pressure under reasonable control. And you guys probably know that persons who have high blood pressure really accelerate their kidney disease, or what we call chronic renal disease. And since I've been doing the therapy for endothelial glycocalyx, I was able to now get down to 2 little blood pressure medicines. And I can't tell you all how proud I am of saying this is a nutrition related issue. And I'm just tickled. I'm just so thankful. And blood pressures these days are, despite the fact that I've got a risk for it, it's not a big deal for me right now. Something I failed to tell you is that when you look at the role of genetics, it's really about 20% influencing to your problem. The other 70 to 80% is lifestyle stuff. And so this one was particularly for me a lifestyle issue. I needed to whack out some of my caffeine and definitely start repairing what was on the inside of my blood vessels. Okay, back to these 2 turkeys. Yeah, bone health, collagen, joint. Yep, knew about that one. Here's one that's kind of fun. How much food does it take to keep you content? And I'm kind of the medium plate here. Not very often do I see somebody who's got a yellow bar here, but what's kind of funny about them is they've got the chicken leg and they've got these like 4 carrots here and a couple little pieces of cauliflower or potatoes or whatever the white stuff is. On the other hand, I will show you my beloved. His is really one. Okay, here's Paul's. What does it take to keep him full? Okay, and it's one that is of really a big importance, because if he's got something that really is that big of a deal, we will find then that he tends to have quite a bit of issues with, you see how his glucose and insulin is quite a bit different than mine was? Yeah, so we learned that it is something to kind of know that we all have some issues in terms of what do we need to pay attention to. We'll even look at the size of fat cells. Okay, my fat cells are there. They tend to have larger and bigger. I'm actually about 5'6.5", and last time I was on the scale last week was 124 pounds. So I'm not heavy. But boy, can I ever put it on if I'm not paying attention. I'm finding that this is one that's important. I have then adipogenesis. Adipo meaning fat, genesis, creation of. My body loves to make fat. So you probably can imagine, as somebody who's got a degree in functional medicine from a medical nutrition perspective, I can't let this happen, although my body would love for it to be. What's irritating to me is that my body doesn't respond to exercise as much as I'd like. You think, well, gosh, Nan, you ride your bike, generally most time anywhere between 50 to 80 miles a week, and you've got a very low response to exercise. You think, yeah, that's why I have to do it. So I have to pay attention to what am I doing exercise-wise, and what is my weight loss resistance? How much do I have to fight with this? And that's something that's really kind of a key piece to know about as well. I know when I'm working with my patients who have some issues with their weight, I need to know, what are we working with? Injury rates.
And before we go through, can you bring that slide up again? Yeah. So how have you changed your approach to exercise and knowing what you know now from the
I'm actually just recently going back to lifting heavier weights, because I do have my power. Where did that go? I guess it's up here. I have potential. I don't know. I can't find it. There it is. I am better at doing lifting as opposed to my endurance. Although from a blood sugar perspective, Irma, I can't give up the bicycling. My heart rate is so fit that my resting heart rate, according to my monitor, I generally have a resting heart rate every night between 48 and 49. And so when I walk, yeah, I might be able to get my heart rate up to 55. And then my Apple Watch screams at me saying, you're not working hard enough.
Right.
When I want to just literally run it over.
Well, because you want it to be where?
Well, I want it to be between, if I want to do a decent level workout, I would like for me at age 64, I'd like for my heart rate to be a minimum of 128 and probably under 146 or so. So that's for my age, that's about, but it takes me so I can't walk, meaning I cannot walk fast enough to get my heart rate there. So I have to literally pound on a bicycle to get my heart rate to be high enough so it actually counts. And so using a tracker is very helpful to me. And I know you use one as well.
And you could not give up the bike riding because
I can't get my heart rate high enough if I'm walking, and because of all my my orthopedic issues of joints in my hips, I used to run about 38 miles a week, and that had to stop. Right. Regrettably. So bicycling was the
you're still riding the bike, and then you're adding weights.
Definitely adding weights. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And with your joint issues, that's going to be okay?
Mm-hmm. I've been well coached. Thankfully, it's not knees, it's hips, and hips are beautifully resilient. And so I am pleased that I can do that and not getting anybody yelling at me. So that's worked out well. Okay. What you can see here on this particular one is that training response. So, I have a medium response, meaning you see my little guy sweating here. Right. Paul's guy is running, and he's got little wings coming off his back. He's somebody who has a very quick response to activity. So when I'm working with my patients, I love to do genetics first so I can see what should we expect. What's their injury risk, endurance, power, and then what happens after we've done something. And so my body is very fortunate that the recovery is really fast, meaning it's not a huge issue, and I can do something 5 or 6 days a week. Other folks have to have some more rest. There's my caffeine tolerance. That changed what I was doing. We'll talk a little bit about iron, fatty acids. Those are important for our brain. Choline is another part in terms of how our mood and our DNA is working with that. This is looking at our probability of celiac. This is not, are you gluten sensitive? So I know a lot of my patients are persons who avoid gluten, which might have to be what they have to do. That is not what we're testing here. We are looking at an autoimmune disease called celiac. Frequently, it's a matter of now for looking at their vitamin D, how sensitive are they to sodium? Do they need some extra vitamin C? What about their B12? And what's kind of cool about this, and I'm going to show you one piece. I'm going to slide through some of this a little bit faster. Those are just different words that we looked at that are areas that are either, yellow, blue, or purple. Here's what I wanted to show you. When we look at, Nan, how is your inflammation? And this is the thing that really would bug me, something crazy about 23andMe is they'd say, oh, you've got the IL-6 gene or you got the IL-1 gene. Oh, no wonder you've got inflammation. And I'd say, that doesn't even come close to it. Look at how many different genes factored into my inflammation.
Oh, so IL is inflammation.
Yeah, Okay. Here's the bone stuff. And that is one that is just a whole series of genes. And so I guess the thing that probably gets me most frustrated is the fact that there is a real complexity to the 3x4. So with that, Irma, I'll turn it back over to you because I know we're probably due with some Q&A from Miss Vicki.
We are. Oh my goodness, we're running out of time. Do you just very quickly want to go into methylation? Can you?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I'll stop my share. And I'm going to go back to the slides, and I'm going to go back to viewing the slideshow.
So as Nan is bringing this up, there are new words, there are a lot of new things here, and just stay with us because it's going to start becoming more common as you hear words over and over again. Methylation, the first time I heard that, I was like, what is that, like Vicks Vapor Rub?
That's good.
I don't know what to do with that.
So it's just a chemical process, and it really is key. So, and having good methylation process I have a beautiful poster from Dr. Ben Lynch. If you guys who followed anything with genetics, he's somebody who's been around for a long time about genetics. And it's a whole pathway. So it's all of the gene pathway things. And every last one of them, when I talk to a patient who has really broken methylation pathways, I show them where on that just big map of all the genes, and I say, you see that methylation pathway? And then I say, look to see how many other really important things are connected to the methylation. And so these are some of the things that it does. This is kind of some of the most clear things that are very clear. So DNA synthesis, if we have problems with repairing parts of our body, that's because the DNA can't repair because we're not having enough methylation. What about the number of people you guys know who've had hormone receptor positive cancer, estrogen receptor cancer? You'll see just about down the road, pretty much each one of those women has methylation defects. Neurotransmitters, those are people oftentimes will say, yeah, I've got some mood issues, Nan. Depression, anxiety, cognitive function. I am married to somebody who has a methylation defect, and it really is something. He travels, he works for Garmin, and so he travels all over literally the world some days. And I know when he hasn't been taking the things he's supposed to take to keep his methylation working, because he'll come home and I see all kinds of things going on about being anxious or depressed or whatever. So it's interesting to see how it all is put together. Estrogen imbalance, how cancer, weight changes, how our heart works. Even look at that, impaired fertility. Yeah, so we know that the genes are really important for making the right enzymes, and our enzymes need cofactors. So we got to have all that put together. Here's the piece that I really wanted to make sure that you all saw. The genes don't work in isolation. That is my biggest problem with 23andMe. Well, not only that, but they kind of don't care about selling your data, and 3x4 is super careful about what they do with their data. And there's really a real focus on having everything super protected. So we know certainly that all of the personal information is double encrypted and certainly has lots of backups to backups, and they never sell it, which I think is really important to know. Now I can finally be done because I didn't do real well for you, Irma. I apologize.
Wait. Let's go back to the methylation just very quickly, and then we'll go to the questions. Because I think that we went through. So what you're saying, if you have a methylation defect,
Right. Mm-hmm.
then how does one work with that? You were mentioning the vital roles that methylation plays, but this test shows that you have methylation defect, right?
Yes, it will. Oh, gosh, yeah. Even it shows it in quite exquisite detail.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about it that's really pretty cool is that this is one of the, I will tell you, the easiest things. It looks like a hero when you're done with it, but a lot of moms will take, or dads will take their kids to me and say, all right, we're now in 6th grade, and this little guy is about ready to be the class clown. He's not learning. He's in the office all the time, and he's driving his teachers crazy. I get the kid and I can put them on just 2 easy, simple things. One is methyl tetrahydrofolate, so that's a compound related to the folic acid. We don't, if you're Northern European, which I think most on the call look like you're all generally a group of white women. When you look at Northern European persons, you will find that their body does not do a good job with folic acid. We need to have the official laboratory version of folic acid, which is called methyl tetrahydrofolate. So we can't use folic acid for most Northern Europeans.
Okay. All right. Thank you. If you want to,
Stop share.
And bring the last slide up so people know how to get in touch with you, as Vicki is going to go through the questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
Can you
ready?
Can you put that in a full screen, Nan? If not, I understand. And while Vicki's going through the questions.
So Cheryl actually had 2 questions, and her first one was, how does the test help with guiding you with diet, supplements, and exercise?
Okay. Well, hopefully we got to that point, right? That it is very much those specifics, and then it's very much
Thank you.
how each one's different, because before we even get to the genetics part, people, as you perhaps recall, Vicki, have given me a very complex medical history, questionnaire, an MHQ, and so I know a lot about them already before we even start to do the genetics and do the lab work. But it helps me to know where are we going first? What's the biggest battle to fight?
She also asked, does the test help you determine your daily calorie level?
No, I have I send people to get that done. I'd love to have you all spend the weekend with me here in Kansas City. Besides that, we have really awesome sports teams. I know that that's not Irma's game, but you could come and spend the weekend with me. One of the things that we do is I'd have you on my bioimpedance scale. Many of the health clubs have them, but it actually will give me exactly how many calories you need as a basal metabolic rate, and then you and I then would negotiate what would you like to do. Is building more muscle a big thing for you, or you want to do more cardio? Based upon your answers to that, I can determine caloric levels. I use a Tanita scale, Tanita, a Tanita scale. You can go to tanita.com. And you can purchase the very scale that I use, and it's something that I step on every Friday to say, what is my body fat percentage? What's my abdominal adiposity? What's my visceral fat? What's my fat weigh, et cetera, et cetera. So you can actually buy the same scale that I use. They've really dropped in price. Used to be about $800. Now it's about $125, I think. It's a great piece of equipment by a Tanita scale.
Thank you. What else?
So Hetty asked, how did the genetic testing enable you to change your blood pressure medications?
Well, what it did is I was able to then use the phytonutrients. I knew what that my blood pressure genetically was a problem. And so there are many compounds in the plant world that are fabulous for helping blood pressure get back under line. Right now I'm having a hard time getting a systolic blood pressure anything over 116. That was my highest one for the last probably week. So I've had trouble with low blood pressure the last couple of weeks because I've really then worked on these phytonutrients that are very helpful for blood pressure management.
So Heather asked, are the food, exercise, supplement recommendations the same for all with a particular issue, such as, is it the same for everyone who has a high bone health risk?
It's going to be similar, but I think also what you saw overlay there, Vicki, was the fact that I have an inflammation component as well. And so I think they've dovetailed those two. Although, however, if somebody's got bone health issues, that would have been probably a good start. Yeah. Then we would want to do some additional lab testing in order to know what kind of trouble somebody might be in. And then I know Irma has whole lists, and I've seen her list. She's got fabulous handouts with that regard about what blood tests do you get done, or do you ask your physician to do.
And I want to say something, Vicki, before we go to the next question.
Sure.
You can buy the test on your own. I didn't want to do that because I wanted Nan there to hold my hand, walk me through it, and then help me understand what the test is all about and how I can make changes. So that was a very important piece for me because I saw a couple of questions that are in the chat.
Yeah, we're going to get there.
Okay, Vicki. I jumped ahead again.
You did. Okay. So what's the name of the histamine supplement you mentioned? Could you say that again?
Absolutely. Now the problem's going to be is I don't believe you're going to be able to buy this on your own. It is made by Integrative Therapeutics is the manufacturer. Integrative Therapeutics. The name of the histamine product is Alpha, ALPHA, glycosyl, GLYCOSYL, isoquercetin, ISOQUERCITIN, alpha glycosyl isoquercetin. It's a mouthful, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that one is literally it's like magic dust, you guys. It is when people are miserable. The other piece that I like, if they can eat it, I like them to eat, if they can, 2 apples a day. If they're not allergic or if they don't have other GI issues, the alpha-glycosyl isoquercetin, that quercetin compound is very much high in apples, and boy, does that actually do a nice job of helping to shut down the whole allergy piece.
That's great. Okay. So we talked about calorie already. What test, this is from Barbara, what test do you request? I noticed there were about 5 tests available. If you're going in to do the 3x4?
I have a whole series of them, Vicki. So it's everything from a complete blood count to a CMP, complete medical group, which is about 15 different tests. I want an A1C. I want a vitamin D.
I don't know if that's what Barbara was asking, though. Maybe Barbara I thought she was asking about the 3x testing. 3x.
Oh, I'm sorry. So what's the? I apologize, Vicki. I messed up.
She said, "What tests do we request?" I noticed there were about 5 tests available.
At 3x4?
Barb, why don't you take yourself?
Barb, what did you ask?
Take yourself off mute and ask your question, Barb.
If we can take the slide deck off, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm here. Yes,
Okay.
I'm referring to the 3x4. I went to the website when Irma first introduced this, and I noticed that there were like 5 or 6 tests, and they were all around $550 each test. And I didn't know which one
And you went to 3x4?
I went to whatever website was in the email.
Whoopsie.
What did you do, Irma?
Okay, thank you, Barb, for that question. So
Okay.
why don't you talk about how you work with people, what the test costs, and
Sure. So the test, if you saw it online, and you can say, I am just going to buy it, Nan. I don't want you even to look at it. It's $299 when you buy it from 3x4, and you say, I'm just going to plow ahead and think I'm going to take care of this by myself. What Irma has said is what I generally encourage most of my patients to do is say, please just pay me $50 to study it in advance of our Zoom conversation. So I generally end up spending a lot more time than that $50 generally would buy, but I want to be very appropriate with my clients. I want you guys to always feel like you got a whole lot more than what you paid for. So I am very much wanting to make sure that you get more than what you thought you'd get. So I'll charge $349 if you buy it. I would, in most cases, I'll buy it for you. I would have to have your Venmo or your Apple Pay or your Google Pay, or you can just pay me once you have the test. You can do that as well. But it is fine that you buy it yourself for $299, or you let me buy it for $349, and that way I get just a small slice of resources to actually study it so that I'm ready to talk to you.
so basically
answer the
what you're saying is that to buy it on your own, as going back to Deb's question, Deb Var's question. I'm concerned that I get the result, not sure how to best interpret the results. What do you recommend? So that's what we're talking about here, that it takes a skilled practitioner to know what's important to emphasize, because you get this thing, it's like, what? Where to begin?
What have I just got myself into?
Right.
Exactly.
Oh my God, this is a mess. To me, it was like getting the Dutch test, which I think is great. I don't know how to read it, so I have to have a practitioner guide me through that. And that's what some of these sophisticated tests need, a trained practitioner to guide you through that. Vicki, did you have anything else? I see that Karen has a question. Can you read Karen's question, Vic?
Sure. Could you please clarify that swabbing the inside of one's cheek resulted in the report you just walked through?
Absolutely. That is exactly how it worked. And Vicki did it, and Irma did it, and it was just a matter of, it's like a Q-tip thing. First thing out of bed, scrub for 60 seconds on the left side, scrub with, and we're not going to talk lots of pressure, but just enough that you can collect some cells off your inside of your cheeks. And then the process is to get that Q-tip-like thing dipped into the chemistry that's there, and that ultimately is what gets sent off to the lab, and then we have a chance together to take a look at the results.
So there's a question here, do you get a copy of your raw data or just the report
Just get the report.
Just the report,
Don't do anything with the raw data. The closest thing to raw data was the
listing.
the page that I said, okay, look at all of these things that went into influencing inflammation or bone health or histamine. So if you would like, you can dig that raw data out of there, but I would suggest that if you just wanted raw data, do 23andMe and risk the fact that they were going to sell your personal information. But
And then you
this
have to upload the raw data to
That's
another
exactly
system.
Somewhere else, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And that's difficult.
frustrating as well.
And I want to emphasize one thing here. This is not a sales call. This is not like, oh, buy now. Oh, quick. Buy what? And here's the coupon code. This is not about that. This is about education about genetic testing and whether or not it's applicable for you. I found it to be very helpful. Vicky found it to be very helpful. We went from using the test to looking at things like wearables, which we didn't even talk about. I wanted to understand my sleep habits, so I bought a wearable, which is an Oura ring. And Nan, you use the WAP, the Whoop, the Whoop.
Whoop, whoop, yeah, whoop.
But
Yes.
wearables are very, they're influential as far as constant glucose monitor. Vicky's been using that. She's been tracking what makes her spike. So this is just about learning. I highly recommend working with Nan because I did, and I had a great time, but I don't get anything out of this. This is just a presentation to educate my audience. So
And I'm actually not making but $50 to spend about an hour and a half studying the data. So that's not really a big deal either. But I would just encourage you guys to consider it because I think it really opens up a lot of ideas for how you might want to improve your health. So anyway.
Vicky, do you have any more questions there?
Well, someone wanted to know, is there a particular model for the Tanita scale?
Yes, RD901.
Okay.
Tanita RD901. I'm going to check to make sure that I have that reported correctly.
And then Cheryl was asking what's the process of working with Nan. And then Monica has a question, Vicky.
Yeah, it's RD901 is the model of the Tanita scale. It's the coolest thing. You have to be well hydrated in order for it to work, though. So you have to drink a lot.
So Monica did want to know, do you charge an additional fee for the actual time spent going over it with the individual?
Absolutely. That's how I earn my living.
Yeah.
Persons in my area here in Kansas City, their average hourly pay is between $205 and $235 per hour. I'm charging, they're a little ticked at me because I'm still like way behind them. I charge $175 an hour. I'd much rather you guys be pleased with what you got and not worried so much about what it costs. Generally, a gene report takes, I'll probably spend 2 hours with you, but I will probably never charge you more than an hour and a half.
And that's
So I
true.
always
That's what Nan did with
charge-
me.
Yeah,
Like, wow, you are just so generous with that.
thank you. That's what I want to be known as, somebody who really wants to do the right thing as often as I'm able to.
Mm-hmm. Vicky, is there anything?
I don't know if you want to get into supplements, but someone did
No.
ask.
No, we don't want to do that because that's going to
Okay,
be too
fine.
particular. And I think it's more about, and I'm sorry about the particular vitamin D. I mean, vitamin D is, I mean, there are so many vitamin Ds out there. I use pure encapsulation. I don't know. It all
Super brand.
depends on whether or not
Yeah.
you can absorb the vitamin D. Vicky uses the liquid. I use the capsule. Vicky doesn't report well with the capsule, so she went to the liquid. It's so personalized.
It's very much so. As is with most all of the supplements, Irma. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So
So, Doreen, is there only one meeting or follow-up?
a lot of it is how fast can you guys suck it up? I mean, frankly, I mean, for some people, they're like, okay, Nan, I've just had a drink with the fire hose, stop. And then there are others that say, oh my gosh, man, I can't wait to do more, or I want to learn more. What about this or what about that? Can you customize an exercise program? Can you change for me this kind of supplement to that kind of supplement? So I like to serve you guys as clients in the capacity that you would like to be served. It is so not a one size fits all. I will tell you a lot of times we are able to do great work on a single 2-hour visit that I ask to be paid for 3/4 of that time.
Right. As far as JL with a constant glucose monitor, I would say Monica is on the call here. Monica Paz, PAZ. You could do a private message with her. She knows all about constant glucose monitor. She's a functional nutritionist. I would highly recommend you contact her, JL, as far as the best one to buy. She'll guide you through that.
I can tell you what I like.
Okay, tell us.
My favorite is Dexcom. You'll find that most persons who are diabetes educators, which I am, and who also have type 1 or a critical need to know what their blood glucose is, we say that at least 92% of us as educators will be using Dexcom. It's oftentimes not well covered by insurance unless you're using insulin, though. So that's the one booger about a Dexcom. But they've really improved. The other brands have improved quite a bit.
And it also depends on whether or not you want nutritional advice along the process.
Yeah.
That's why I had mentioned Monica. So what I'd like to ask everybody to please put in one or two, because we're way over time, one takeaway from this presentation. And I hope, Nan, put up the last slide that they know where to contact you as
Sure.
they're doing that.
That's assuming that I can get it again. No. Okay, there's share. All right, share. There we go.
There you go.
I actually did it, Irma, without messing it up.
It's going. Yeah. So, okay, everybody can see the email. If you want to work with Nan, what do you want people to do? To reach out to you, Nan, and say, I want to go forward, or what do you want people to do?
Well, it's one that probably says, I'm very interested in genetics, or I would like to work with you specifically about medical nutrition therapy, or, tell me, Nan, I'm worried about this lab test, or I'd like for you to do, whatever, looking at this, that, or the other thing. So again, as a functional medicine trained clinician, I can do a variety of things, but it would be one that you would tell me what you'd like to work with. And I do much more than just genetics, but this happens to be our topic for tonight. But tell me in your email what you're interested in. And then in your email, I'd like for you to include your phone number. I've had major hand surgery, again, part of my osteoarthritis joint issue. I've had both of my thumb joints taken out and rebuilt with a tendon transfer surgery. So I've got major scars on both my left and my right thumb. So typing and texting is painful for me still. It's a 9-month recovery process, and I'm only about 2.5 months on my right hand in recovery. So I still have trouble unloading the dishwasher 1 plate at a time. So that's where I'm at. Paul does it these days. But anyway, so I'd much rather if you said, Nan, I'm interested, and I'd say, please give me your phone number, and then even parameters as to when I can call. And then I'd love to just chat, say, hey, Diana, it was great to see that you were on the Zoom call. I would love to work with you. What's your story? Let me see if I can help you. And we start that way.
Yeah, so I just want to read some of these comments. And it's very interesting because Karen, who actually planted the seed in my mind, I always like to listen to my Bones Tribe members, like, what do they need? What would be helpful? And she said, it's kind of scary, right? And I get that. I'm looking for your comment. Yeah, it kind of scares me, Karen said, because I'm not exactly sure why Karen said that, but I understand why she said that. And I thought, how much do we want to know? So that's the only thing I could say about that. The expression of our genetics can be greatly affected by our environment. Yes.
Absolutely.
Cindy, thanks you for a very inspiring next step. Your DNA results can be life-changing. One more way of understanding what makes me tick. That's right, Hetty. I was fascinated by what makes me tick, and every time I take another test like this, it's like, oh. From Nancy, thank you for the fascinating and informative presentation. It seems like a new way to fine-tune our diets, exercise program, and supplements. Joanne, great new resources for investigation. I would love it to be my T1 diabetic daughter. I would love it. My T1 diabetic daughter met with Nan and followed the lead with me. Great presentation. Thank you, Nan and Irma. Thank you, Nan and Irma. And Vicky, I want to know how to live well for the rest of my life at 68. There you go, Cheryl. Nice presentation. Help understand me 3X by 4. Okay. And Sheila, I had a genetic test when I was 3 months pregnant because I was high risk of also having, also in 2022, and to find if Chad, if she had the BRCA gene. This is very interesting. I didn't realize there's genetic testing that could give all the information about improving your health. Thank you very much. Elsa, I like the idea of fine-tuning our diets and exercise. Okay, so I'm going to end because everybody has to go. And thank you for staying on a little bit longer and really appreciate. Nan, great job. Great job.
Thank you.
I know you have a lot more to say. And on our calls, I saw how much you have to say and how much you know. I've been taking some of the supplements that you've recommended, especially that alpha glycosyl
Quercetin. Yeah,
quercetin.
you did.
I've been doing that right since we've met. So, all right, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you everyone
Yes.
for being
Thank you
here.
all.
All right,
Bye,
Glad you were
everyone.
here.
yeah, great job.
Thanks, there. Thanks, Irma.
Yes.
Thank you, Vicky. Thank you very much, Vicky.
Yeah. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Irma.
Bye.